My mom works at NASA. That's all she said. 5 words. No drama. No shouting. Just a quiet sentence in the middle of a regular school day. And in less than 10 seconds, the entire room turned against her. It started with a giggle. Small, almost nothing. Then a whisper, followed by a chuckle. And then came the wave of full-on laughter, the kind that rolls through a classroom like wind across a field, picking up speed and volume with every new voice that joins in. By the time it reached the back row, kids were practically doubled over in their chairs. All because Maya Palmer, the soft-spoken girl in the second row with the scuffed sneakers and the borrowed hoodie, had stood up and dared to say something they didn't believe she was allowed to say. The day had started normally. It was a Tuesday, right after recess. Everyone still had pink cheeks and dusty knees from kickball and monkey bars. The air smelled like sanitizer and fruit snacks. The windows were cracked open, just enough to let in a breeze that made the class flag flutter. Ms. Carter clapped her hands to quiet the chatter, a thin smile on her face as she pulled out her clipboard and said, "Time for presentations." The class had been working on these for a week, what my parent does. Some kids brought props, others just stories. One boy showed off a real firefighter's helmet. A girl passed around a tray of cookies from her mum's bakery. There was clapping, laughter, even a few oohs and ahs. It was light, fun, safe. Until it wasn't. When Maya stood up, she didn't bring a poster or a slideshow, just a little card, folded twice, with her name written in neat blue ink. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look excited either, just steady, focused. Her eyes scanned the room, but she didn't seem to lock onto anyone. And then she said it, as simply as you'd say your favorite color. "My mum works at NASA." It was silent for a beat, just one. That split second where maybe, just maybe, they would have believed her. But they didn't, because by the next breath, someone snorted. Another kid muttered, "Sure she does." And just like that, the laughter began. It wasn't just the noise that stung. It was the kind of laughter it was. Not the we're all having fun kind, but the sharp-edged kind, soaked in disbelief. The kind that says, "You? No way." One kid in the back called out, "You mean like with the astronauts?" Another whispered, "She's lying," not quietly enough to pretend it wasn't meant to be heard. And Maya, she didn't flinch. She didn't drop her card or fumble her words. She just stood there, small but unshaken, and repeated it. She works at NASA. She's a systems engineer. The class didn't know what that meant. They didn't care to ask. And worst of all, Ms. Carter, the adult in the room, the one who should have stepped in. She didn't. Her eyebrows lifted, just barely. Not a laugh, but a look. One of those looks that carries its own kind of doubt. The teacher gave one of those tight, polite smiles and said, "Thank you, Maya," already looking down at her list. "Next up, we have Jackson." And just like that, it was over. At least for the class. Not for Maya. She sat down without a word, her fingers gripping the sides of her chair. No one noticed the way her shoulders tensed. Or maybe they did, and just chose not to care. As Jackson launched into a loud story about fixing toilets with his dad, Maya sat perfectly still, but her ears burned red and her stomach churned. Because in that moment, it wasn't just her story they had laughed at. It was her. They didn't see how wrong it was, because they didn't think she could be right. The disbelief wasn't about NASA. Not really. It was about her. The girl who never wore new clothes. The girl who always returned permission slips late because her mum worked long shifts and forgot to sign them. The girl who brought lunch in reused grocery bags and never had the trendy snacks. She didn't fit the mold of a NASA kid. To them, brilliance had a look. Confidence had a sound. And Maya didn't match either. She had deep brown skin and hair pulled into tight, perfect braids that she never fidgeted with during class. Her voice was soft, but her words were always chosen carefully. And somehow, all of that made it harder for them to believe her. As if intelligence had a skin tone, or a voice pitch, or a zip code. No one said those words out loud, of course. They didn't have to. It was in the laughter, in the way eyes rolled and whispers spread, in the note that slid across her desk during Jackson's presentation. Sloppy handwriting, smudged pencil. Does she mop the floors at NASA or something? No name, of course. Just the kind of anonymous cruelty that kids pretend is funny when it's really just mean. But Maya didn't rip the note. She didn't pass it back. She tucked it into her pocket and kept her head high. Because the truth is, she did believe what she'd said. She believed in her mum's job, her mum's talent, her mum's story. What stung wasn't that they laughed. It was that none of them even asked a question. Not one kid said, "Really?" with curiosity. Not one voice asked, "What does she do there?" They didn't want to know more. They wanted to mock what they couldn't imagine. And that was the part Maya couldn't shake. When the bell finally rang, and the class rushed to grab backpacks and crumpled homework, Maya stayed seated. Her eyes were locked on the door. Not because she expected someone to walk through it, but because for the first time in a long time, she wished her mum had a different job. Not because it wasn't impressive, but because it was too impressive for people to believe coming from her. And that made it feel like a burden, instead of the pride it should have been. But even then, even with the hurt in her chest and the shame that didn't belong to her, Maya knew one thing for certain. Her mum did not work that hard, for that long, to be doubted by a room full of 10-year-olds who didn't understand the first thing about what greatness actually looked like. When Maya got home that afternoon, the house felt unusually quiet, like even the walls knew something had gone wrong. She opened the front door slowly, her fingers still clenched around the edges of her note card, now wrinkled and soft from being held too tightly all day. She didn't toss her backpack the way she normally did, didn't call out, "I'm home," in that half sing-song voice she always used. She just slipped off her shoes, walked into the kitchen, and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her mum at the stove. The scent of garlic and thyme filled the air, something simmering in the big red pot. It smelled like comfort, like home, like everything the school had made feel far away. Dr. Jasmine Reed, tall, composed, hair pulled into a neat bun, stood at the stove in her work pants and a grey t-shirt with faint oil stains on the sleeve. She hadn't changed out of her work clothes yet. There was a quiet ease to the way she moved, flipping the spoon in one hand, turning down the flame with the other. Without even turning around, she said, "You're late. Everything okay?" It wasn't an accusation, just a check-in. Maya didn't answer right away. She pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat down slowly, shoulders hunched, hands tucked between her knees. Jasmine turned, saw the look on her daughter's face, and immediately lowered the heat on the stove. Maya finally spoke. Just 2 words. They laughed. Jasmine didn't ask who. She didn't need to. She moved to the table, sat down across from her daughter, and waited. No dramatics, no gasps, just presence. Maya's voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but every word was weighted. She told her about the presentations, about the smirks, the snickers, the note. She even mentioned the way her teacher's eyes flicked up in that barely noticeable way, the silent doubt that stung more than words. Jasmine listened to every word without interruption. No anger, no outrage, just that steady listening that Maya had always counted on. "I told them what you do," Maya said, her voice cracking just slightly. "That you're a systems engineer at NASA." Jasmine nodded gently, a soft breath escaping her. and they didn't believe you. One boy said maybe you clean the bathrooms, Maya added, not looking up. Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, calmly but firmly, "And what did you say back?" Maya shook her head. Nothing. Miss Carter just moved on, like she didn't want to deal with it. Jasmine's jaw tensed, barely, but her voice stayed even. "Do you think you said anything wrong?" Maya's head snapped up. "No." "Then don't wear their ignorance like it belongs to you." The kitchen was quiet except for the soft bubbling from the stove. Jasmine stood again, stirred the pot slowly, and then spoke in that way she did when she was about to tell the truth, the kind of truth that sits with you long after the dishes are done. "When I was in high school," she said, "I told my guidance counselor I wanted to study aerospace. She looked at me and said I should be more realistic, told me I'd make a good secretary, said I should look into clerical work. I didn't argue. I just never went back to her office." Maya blinked. "Did it hurt?" Jasmine turned off the burner, set the spoon down, and looked at her daughter. "Yeah, but it also lit something inside me. I wasn't mad at her. I was just done letting other people decide what made sense for me." Maya smiled, just a little. "You're going to tell me it's character building, aren't you?" Jasmine smirked. "Number. I'm going to tell you I could come to your class on Friday. It's Parent Day, right?" Maya's eyebrows rose. "You'd do that?" "I have a day off anyway, could be fun. But what would you wear?" Jasmine grinned, the kind that said she already had a plan. "I was thinking that blazer you hate, and maybe my NASA badge." Maya's eyes lit up in a way they hadn't all day. "Do it, please. Wear the badge." And for the first time since walking through the front door, she laughed, really laughed. Not the kind that hides hurt, the kind that breaks through it. All week, Maya didn't tell anyone. Not a soul. She carried the secret like a spark in her chest. It gave her something to hold on to, something steady. Whispers still floated around the classroom, thin and lazy like dust in the morning sun. A few kids tried to pretend they hadn't laughed. One girl offered her a squashed brownie during lunch, saying, "No hard feelings, right?" Another boy mumbled, "I was just joking," without meeting her eyes. But most didn't say anything at all, which was fine. Maya didn't need their apologies. She hadn't forgotten, but she wasn't focused on them anymore. By Friday morning, the classroom was buzzing with excitement. Desks had been rearranged into a big circle. Ms. Carter wore a blouse she clearly didn't wear often, and set out a tray of grocery store cookies like it was a party. Parents began arriving just after 9 a.m. A dad in overalls, a mum in scrubs, a few with coffee cups and tired smiles. They took their turns, talking about fixing pipes, working night shifts, balancing schedules. There was polite applause, even some laughter. Maya sat near the middle, hands folded neatly in her lap, her backpack tucked under her chair. Her heart was thudding, but not with fear. It was something else. Anticipation, maybe. A quiet thrill. And then, as Ms. Carter was about to introduce the next speaker, the classroom door creaked open. Heads turned. And there she was. Dr. Jasmine Reed. Blazer sharp, slacks pressed, a silver watch on one wrist, and hanging from a navy blue lanyard, her NASA badge, gleaming under the classroom lights. She didn't smile too big, didn't strut. She walked in like she had every right to be there, because she did. The room fell silent, not in fear, but in curiosity, in surprise. Ms. Carter blinked, visibly caught off guard. "And you are?" Maya stood up, not shy, not small. "This is my mom." Dr. Jasmine Reed, Ms. Carter, hesitated, then forced a polite smile. "Welcome. Would you like to tell us about your work?" Jasmine gave a single nod. "Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm a systems engineer at NASA. I design systems for spacecraft navigation, communication, and mission coordination. She spoke clearly, but not like she was trying to impress anyone. Her voice was steady, sure, like it had already been through enough rooms where people underestimated her. She passed around a diagram of a real spacecraft interface. Kids leaned in, eyes widened. A few mouths hung open. Then she paused and said, "I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came because my daughter told you the truth, and some of you didn't believe her." Her words landed heavy, but not mean, not sharp, just true. "That's okay," she added. "It's hard to believe things sometimes when they don't match what we've been taught to expect. But brilliance, curiosity, talent, it comes in all kinds of packages. So next time someone tells you something that sounds big, maybe just ask a question before you laugh." She looked over at Maya, then back at the room. "And when someone shares their truth with you, don't shrink it. Let it stand." There was a silence afterward that didn't feel awkward. It felt full of thought, full of something shifting. Ms. Carter cleared her throat, mumbled, "Thank you, Doctor," Reed, and moved on to the next parent, a car dealer who talked about haggling prices. But the energy in the room had already changed. No more snickers, no more side eyes. And Maya. She didn't need to smile to feel proud. She just sat taller, her chest open, her breath easy. For the first time all year, she felt like her truth had finally been heard. After that Friday, something changed. It wasn't loud or obvious. There were no balloons, no celebratory cheers, no sudden swarm of kids wanting to sit next to her or ask her to play at recess. It was quieter than that. Subtle. Like the way air feels different right before a storm breaks. You can't always point to it, but it's there, in your chest, in the way your body reacts before your brain catches up. That Monday, when Maya walked into the classroom, no one said anything cruel. No one whispered "NASA girl" with that mocking tone. No one laughed when she spoke. And for Maya, that silence was louder than any noise. The kind of silence that said people were thinking. That maybe, just maybe, the story they told themselves about her had been cracked wide open. Ms. Carter didn't say much either, but she looked at Maya longer than usual during morning attendance. Not the skeptical glance from earlier that week, but something closer to awareness. Like she had finally seen something she hadn't bothered to notice before. At recess, two girls, Amira and Katie, walked up to Maya by the monkey bars, where she usually stood alone pretending not to notice she wasn't being asked to join the games. They didn't apologize. They didn't gush. They just stood there for a moment, shifting awkwardly, and then Katie said, "My mum said your mum was really impressive. Like, super smart." Maya looked at her, heart still guarded, but nodded. "She is." Then Amira added, "I looked up NASA stuff over the weekend. It's actually kind of cool." And that was it. That was the whole conversation. But they didn't leave. They stayed. And for the first time all year, Maya didn't eat lunch alone. But not everyone had changed. There were still sideways glances from a few boys in the back of the room. One of them, Dean, seemed determined to restore some version of the world where Maya was small and unimportant. Every time she walked by, he muttered, "Space janitor," under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear. She didn't respond. She didn't flinch. She just kept walking, head up, eyes forward. Because she had seen what silence used to feel like. And now, she had something louder to hold on to. And it wasn't just about how others saw her anymore. Something inside her had shifted too. She started raising her hand in class. Not every time, and not always when she was sure she had the right answer. but because she realized she didn't need to be perfect to be heard. That was new. That was powerful. During a group project on weather systems, she took the lead. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she knew she could. And when someone rolled their eyes, she didn't shrink. She didn't even hesitate. She just kept going. Because Maya had stopped waiting for permission. At home, Dr. Reed noticed the shift almost immediately. Maya talked more, not just about school, but about ideas, about science, about space, about the way things worked. She pulled out her old notebooks from last year and started filling them with new diagrams, sketches of satellites and propulsion systems, scribbled notes about solar panels and orbit stability. It wasn't homework. It wasn't assigned. It was just hers. One night, Jasmine came home to find a sticky note stuck on the fridge, right under the grocery list. It said, "I'm going to work there too. Love, Maya." And Jasmine stood in that kitchen for a long time, hand resting on the fridge, heart full in a way words could never reach. But what those kids in that classroom didn't know, what even Maya hadn't known yet, was how far Jasmine had come just to be standing in that room with a badge around her neck and steady confidence in her voice. Because before she was Dr. Jasmine Reed, she was just Jasmine Lewis from East Atlanta, a lanky kid with glasses that slipped down her nose and a second-hand backpack full of duct-taped notebooks. She was the only girl on her middle school robotics team, the only black kid in the advanced math group, and the only one who didn't have a computer at home. She stayed after school to use the library ones, printing out articles and tutorials to take home and read under her bed sheets with a flashlight while her grandmother snored in the next room. Her favorite book wasn't fiction. It was a textbook on orbital mechanics she found at a thrift store for $1. No one else cared about it. But Jasmine did. She cared enough to memorize whole chapters. When she told her high school counselor she wanted to work in aerospace, the woman looked at her and said, "That's ambitious. Maybe try aiming for something more practical. What about administrative work?" Jasmine didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just said, "Thank you," and stopped asking for her help. That year, she applied to a pre-college engineering program on her own, without telling anyone. When she got in, she used part of her summer job money to buy a bus ticket to the university across the state. She showed up with a duffel bag, a folder of diagrams, and no idea where the dorms were. At college, it didn't get easier. At Georgia Tech, she was one of 3 black women in the entire engineering program. In every lab group, she was asked to take notes instead of calculate. Professors mispronounced her name, even after 3 semesters. She once overheard a classmate say, "She's probably here on some scholarship." Another one joked, "NASA better triple-check her work." But Jasmine didn't correct them. She corrected the equations, again and again, until one semester, she was at the top of her class in thermodynamics, and none of them had anything left to say. After graduation, she sent her resume to every aerospace agency she could find: Lockheed, Boeing, JPL, NASA. She didn't expect to hear back. But then, one afternoon, while she sat in a laundromat reading a technical journal beside a spinning dryer, her phone rang. It was a number from Houston, and just like that, everything changed. So when Jasmine walked into that classroom and said, "My daughter told you the truth," it wasn't just about that one moment. It was about every moment before it. Every staircase she climbed when people looked away. Every seat at the table she pulled out for herself. Every time she chose to stay, to work, to believe. And now, all of that history, all of that hard-fought truth, was something she passed to her daughter. Not as a burden, but as a birthright. And Maya, she carried it differently now. Not like proof, not like a shield, but like something stitched into her. A quiet, undeniable belief that she didn't need to convince anyone anymore. Because the next time someone doubted her, She wouldn't try to shrink her answer to fit their expectations. She'd just say it again, calmly, clearly, and full of pride. My mum works at NASA, and one day soon, so will I. From that day forward, Maya carried herself differently, not louder, not flashier, but firmer, like someone who had stopped asking for space and decided to take it. Her walk down the hallways changed. Her shoulders didn't slope anymore. Her eyes didn't drift to the floor when she passed people. And it wasn't because everyone suddenly treated her like royalty. They didn't. In fact, some kids seemed even more determined to pull her back into the box they'd kept her in before. Like the idea of Maya being more than they had imagined was too uncomfortable to sit with. And so, they poked. Dean, the boy who never missed a chance to mutter something, tried out a new nickname. "NASA kid," he'd say under his breath, every time she walked past. Always with a smirk, always low enough to deny if called out. But Maya didn't flinch, not once. She didn't respond, didn't look back, didn't even pause, because she had already done the hardest part, standing up, saying the truth, and letting the world catch up. Everything after that felt small. It wasn't about proving herself anymore. That need had vanished the moment her mom walked into the classroom, badge shining, voice steady, telling the truth like it was undeniable. And since then, Maya had stopped chasing anyone's belief but her own. She raised her hand more often now, even when she wasn't 100% sure of her answer. She joined group discussions without waiting to be asked. During a science activity on environmental systems, she offered a solution no one else had thought of, using solar mirrors to regulate heat. Her group blinked at her for a second, surprised, and then just nodded. They listened, not because they suddenly adored her, but because she had stopped asking for permission to be smart. Still, the shift wasn't just academic. It was personal. At lunch, kids started sitting near her, not a crowd, but enough. Amira and Katie became regulars at her table. They didn't talk about NASA much anymore, and Maya appreciated that. They talked about music, about a show they all secretly liked but never admitted until now, and even about slime videos and who had the best snack trade deals. Maya laughed more, not in a desperate please like me way, but in a way that came from comfort, from the kind of friendships that didn't ask her to explain who she was before they believed it. Even Ms. Carter noticed. One afternoon, as the class packed up for dismissal, she called Maya over to her desk. Her voice was quieter than usual, more careful. "I've been thinking about last week," she said, eyes not quite meeting Maya's. "I want to apologize. I should have handled it differently when you said where your mum worked. I should have asked more questions. I moved on too quickly, and I see that now." Maya stood there, unsure what to say. She wasn't used to adults admitting they were wrong. She wasn't used to teachers seeing her at all, beyond grades and attendance. So she just nodded, slowly. That was enough. For now. But that didn't mean the classroom was suddenly perfect. Some kids still whispered, just more carefully now. A few seemed to wait for her to mess up, like they needed her to trip, to say something wrong, to answer a question poorly, just to restore the balance in their own minds. But Maya didn't waver. She showed up every day. She did her work. She kept speaking, not because everyone listened, but because she knew her voice had value, whether they did or not. During another group project, she overheard a classmate whisper, "She thinks she's better than us." Maya didn't raise her voice or roll her eyes. She just turned her head, looked them in the face and said, "No. I just know I belong here." There was no argument after that. At home, the change was just as clear. Jasmine noticed it in the little things. How Maya didn't need to be asked twice to talk about her day. How she came to dinner with something to share, not just something to eat. How she stayed at the kitchen table after dessert, sketching in her notebooks without being prompted. She wasn't drawing cartoons anymore. She was designing diagrams of rockets, propulsion systems, even suits for lunar travel. Jasmine found one drawing taped to the fridge one morning, nestled between the grocery list and a magnet shaped like Saturn. At the bottom, Maya had written, "I'm going to build this one day." Jasmine didn't move it, didn't say a word. She just stood there for a moment, heart full. It wasn't about confidence, not really. It was something deeper. Maya had stopped needing the world to clap. She'd stopped looking around for approval. She'd started asking different questions, not, "Do they believe me?" but, "What do I believe is possible?" And that, Jasmine knew, was the most powerful shift of all. One night, while Maya was at the kitchen table drawing a new design for a rotating satellite that used flower-shaped solar panels, Jasmine sat across from her, drying a dish in her hands. The way Maya focused, tongue pressed slightly against her upper lip, reminded Jasmine of herself at that age, lost in thought, imagining solutions to problems no one else was thinking about. "You've been working on that for 2 hours," Jasmine said gently. Maya didn't look up. "I just want it to look right." She finished a final line, then turned the page toward her mum. "Explain it to me," Jasmine said. Maya beamed. "It's a satellite that opens its panels like petals to follow the sun throughout the day, like a sunflower, but in orbit." Jasmine nodded, impressed. "Where'd you get the idea?" Maya shrugged. "Just came to me. I was thinking about plants, how they move, and then it hit me." Jasmine sat down beside her, placing the paper gently on the table. "You know what I love most about this? You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just trying to solve a problem." They sat there in silence for a moment. The good kind. The kind that doesn't need filling. Then Maya asked, quieter this time, "Do you think they really believed me? After you left?" Jasmine rested her hand on the table. "Some did. Some still don't. That's not something you can always control." Maya frowned. "So what do I do?" Jasmine leaned forward, voice steady. "You keep showing up. That's the hard part. Not just once, but over and over. You speak your truth, even when it feels like no one hears it." Maya thought for a second. "Like you did?" Jasmine smiled. "Like I still do." It was the first time Maya looked at her mum and saw not just a parent, but a person. A woman who had fought through rooms where no one expected her to speak, let alone lead. Someone who didn't wait for applause, but created her own space to be seen. "I used to wish you had a regular job," Maya admitted. "Something easy to explain." Jasmine laughed softly. "I know. I could see it in your eyes every time someone asked." Maya looked down at her drawing. "But now I think it's cool. Like, really cool." Jasmine tucked one of her daughter's braids behind her ear. "I'm proud of you. Not because you told them what I do, but because you told them anyway." Maya's eyes welled just a little. "I didn't think you were going to come that day." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" Maya's voice was a whisper now. "I thought maybe you'd think it wasn't worth it." Jasmine leaned in. "Anything that messes with how you see yourself? That's always worth showing up for." And that was it. No speech, no dramatic moment. Just a mother and daughter, and a drawing taped to the fridge. But what happened next would ripple out in quiet ways. Ways they wouldn't even realize until much later. Because when Maya's class made their end-of-year memory book, each student got a "most likely to" caption beneath their photo. Under Maya's picture, quiet smile, braided hair, hands folded in her lap, someone had written, "Most likely to launch something into space." Maya didn't say anything when she saw it. She just smiled. Not because it sounded cool, but because this time they actually meant it.